kinfolk? Welcome back to my channel. We have Jerrilyn here for another Real Talk Thursday. And today we're going to talk about a topic that I think is really, really important because I feel like a lot of people don't really think about this when they're in relationships, but emotional abuse, I feel like, is a really important topic. People who are the abusers don't see their abuse as abuse, and people who are being abused might not even realize that that's what's happening. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. If you want to hear what we have to say on the topic, then keep on watching. I shared with you guys 8 different ways to know that you are in an emotionally abusive relationship, and I gave you examples from my own experience. So examples of things that have happened to me, I told you about those. So Jerrilyn, I feel like you have an interesting perspective because you not only, you've been in emotionally abusive relationships, but you've also grew up in an emotionally abusive household. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Like, what was your experience like, and did you realize that you were in an emotionally abusive relationship with whoever it was in your household?
I don't think I realized it because, like you said, a lot of times the person doesn't realize or don't want to accept that that's what they're doing.
Right.
And then the person at the receiving end is like, what is going on? You kind of have like that Twilight Zone feeling like we talked about in another video. But I think how it has mostly manifested for me in my life from what I've seen and what I've experienced is manipulation.
Yeah.
When a person manipulates you to get whatever out of you that they want. And it can happen in a lot of different ways. I think usually it's by like belittling you or taking your self-esteem down enough to where now all of a sudden you don't want to speak up for yourself. You don't want to stand up for yourself. Because a person who doesn't have self-esteem will accept anything.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of emotional abusers know they know how to choose their victims. You know, they choose people who are insecure, who are weaker, which a lot of times if you're being emotionally abused, you are in that moment weak.
Yeah. People who have that aspect of their personality, like they are the one who is emotionally abusive, they just prey on people until they get someone that falls into those traps. So they tend to not be that way with someone who is strong-willed or someone who stands up for themselves. But if they find someone who caves in, they're like, okay, well, here's the one that I know I can do this with. And it's almost kind of like a brainwashing.
Definitely.
So it starts with little tiny things, because those little tiny things you always feel like, well, that wasn't a big deal.
Exactly.
That wasn't a big deal. And then once you do that long enough, you become conditioned to that state of affairs. So now they can ratchet it up a little bit.
Exactly.
And do a little more and a little more. And you just start to rationalize it in your own head, because when you're the victim of any type of abuse, emotional, physical, financial, sexual, whatever, it's hard to accept that that's what's happening to you.
For sure.
So you try to make it seem like it's something else. And I think the person knows that too. That's why a lot of times people try to make the victims feel like it's their fault, because then they don't have to take ownership. Absolutely. And then you feel like you have some responsibility. So this wouldn't have happened to me if I wouldn't have.
Exactly.
Blah, blah, blah.
But if you do hit a breaking point, they always switch gears. So it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose them. So then they'll do the dirt. They'll make you feel less than. They'll manipulate you. But then they'll turn around and treat you really well. So then they'll do that off and on. At least this is what I've experienced. So that if you're like, well, I mean, the way you made me feel a little, well, do you remember that time when I, like, you're always trying to find something wrong.
It becomes a really unhealthy back and forth. I remember telling my ex-husband after I can't remember, it was either at the tail end of our relationship or after, that I felt like he was emotionally abusive, and he was appalled appalled
like
that I would have said that.
Yeah.
Because I, whether or not that was his intention, and I'm sure it wasn't, but you have to remember how you say things a lot of times and the way that you frame things. So let's say, for example, he's a musician and I am a singer. But I was always very self-conscious about my gift. I didn't think I was as good as other people. I was always afraid to sing out, afraid to sing lead or whatever. And I remember he would say little stuff like, he'd be listening to someone else and be like, but can you sing like that though? Like, she sings like blah, blah, blah. Oh. So he may have really been thinking in his head like that was an innocent comment. But to me, it was just a way to like break down my self-esteem. Yeah, Not saying that he did it intentionally, but there were just so many things that happened like that in that category. It was always like a lot of comparison of me to other people, or kind of making me feel like I wasn't as good as someone else.
Right.
Or just belittling the things that I did do, whether it was the money. Like if he made more money, he would make comments a lot of times about me not making as much money. And to me, if you add all of that up, to me, that's emotional abuse.
Absolutely.
I just don't think he saw it that way.
I wonder sometimes, I feel like they're so used to their behavior that they see it as normal, but I feel like they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, because I've been in a situation in regards to the whole comparison thing. Mm-hmm. I told you this, I think, but I was with a guy and he got a text message of a picture of a girl, like a full body picture of a girl that his friend was dating or something. Because guys do that, whatever. And he showed me the picture because I'm always on like a fitness journey. And he showed me the picture and was just like, mm-hmm. this should be your goal. Mm. I'm like, are you serious? And at the time, I just didn't say anything. I just like took mental note because I think I was so shocked. Mm-hmm. But like stuff like that would happen all the time. A commercial came on with this really beautiful black woman. It was I think it was an AT&T commercial or something. And he was just like, now that is a beautiful black woman. Look at her lips. Look at her, like, everything. Like, now that's a black woman.
Like, you're not
like, I'm not black enough. Because we had a conversation about his family feels like if you have one drop of white blood, then you're white. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like the reverse one drop rule.
Oh, yeah. That's weird.
Yeah, it was weird. And he said that anytime he would bring, like, if he were to ever bring anyone who's not 100% black home, that his parents wouldn't accept mm-hmm. them. So I asked him, I was like, so do you think that if you ever took me home to your parents, that they would accept me? And he was like, probably not, because to them you're white. So it was almost like his way of making me feel like I wasn't black enough.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was really interesting. But
we all forecast our own prejudices on other people too.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, probably a topic for another video, but I know as far as like growing up in my household, financial abuse was huge. And I think a lot of people go through that. So let's say you have a man and either you are a stay-at-home mom or you make a lot less. If the person that you're with is really manipulative, they can use money too as a way to make sure you have to come to them every time you need something. Or now they can really control what it is that you wear or what it is that you eat or whatever the case may be. If you want something for yourself or anything that's going to make you feel better, they have the option to withhold that from you. So that was kind of the case with my parents. My mom would either have to go to my dad or she would have to go without. Even though they both always worked, he was the one who controlled the finances. And I don't mean just control it in terms of one person kind of oversees, like whoever's better with money. Yeah. I mean like controlled with an iron fist, like she might as well have been a kid asking for an allowance.
Right.
So that's definitely a form
And I don't feel like a lot of people look at that like it's abuse.
Yeah, for sure. But it is.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
And if if you look up the word abuse in the dictionary, which I haven't, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's just basically when you use something for a purpose other than what it was intended. So, when you use something in order to control or manipulate someone, that is abusing. Like we always hear of like abuse of power and stuff of that nature. So anything that someone's doing that has a negative intention behind it can be abuse. Absolutely. But I think with the way that culture is now, people think abuse has to be like a sexual or like it has to be overt, like you just punch me in the face. But it can be a lot of little things, and those little things add up to that bigger thing. Because people who emotionally abuse you, once you let that build up, one day they hit you.
Right.
I mean, usually more often than not, it happens that way. Because the emotional abuse is the breaking down of your self-esteem, is the breaking down of your worth, of your value, so that they can get you to that next point of whatever else that their intentions are.
Well, I feel like a lot of people are in emotionally abusive relationships. A lot of abusers typically go for the empath. An empath is someone who can feel and take on the emotions of someone else. So if Jerrilyn's having a bad day, I could like feel her emotion and almost take it on and like feel the emotion with her. And people like that tend to make excuses. Well, he only did that because he was just having a really bad day, or he only said that to me because whatever the reason, the excuse is, just making excuses for the person instead of like, no, that was wrong. And then if you do try to stand up for yourself, it's always somehow, even if it's blatant. I dealt with this guy that I talked to, like literally I had actual proof, like duty for text messaging, and he would find a way to just twist it and turn it around to try to make it my fault. And it like made no sense at all, but to him it was totally logical. Right. And like, it's your fault and you're the reason and blah, 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 blah. And they do it can be very aggressive, but it can also just be super subtle, like, well, if you wouldn't have done that, then I wouldn't have done this. And you're like, well, if you wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have, like, but it's your fault because you shouldn't have responded that way. Whatever the situation was. I mean, we could go on and on and on probably about ways to explain what types of emotional abuse there are, because there are just so many different things.
And there's a difference between emotional abuse and maybe emotional immaturity. Yeah. So when you're emotionally immature, like we all make mistakes. We all do things that we maybe don't understand the consequences, or something happened and we're like, man, I didn't intend for that to happen. But when you're emotionally immature, you get to a point to where you realize, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. This is having this type of effect. And usually you're going to start to correct your behavior. You're going to apologize. You're going to try to do better. You're going to have a change of actions. People who are emotionally abusive do not change their actions. Right. They continue in that same pattern of behavior, and they may apologize, but the apology is intended to manipulate the situation. Right. So that's how you really know the difference between just emotional immaturity and emotional abuse is, does the behavior ever change? Yeah. And the behavior with an emotional abuser, in my experience, can change for a short period of time. Right. But it's only to, like, when they feel like they're losing you, they'll switch gears and kind of get you back in their good graces. Yeah. And then they'll revert back to their normal behavior. So it all goes back to play into what they're trying to gain. It's never a permanent change. Right. If you feel like you may be in an emotionally abusive relationship of any kind, a romantic relationship, a friendship, a business partnership, or what have you, even if it's with a parent, which is, I think, it's a tricky one. Yeah. Because, we're supposed to respect our parents, but we're not supposed to allow our parents to abuse us. Yeah. You can still set boundaries there. Right. So, there are ways that you can set boundaries once you feel like, I think this is abuse, but I'm not quite sure. So definitely speaking up for yourself in a respectful way. So you want to be respectful of whatever the relationship is. But notice how they treat you if you come to them and say, I've been noticing that you do this and it really makes me feel bad when you do that. Can you stop doing this or what? And just start to take mental notes, like you always say, on how they react. Yeah. If you come to them just totally respectfully and out of love and they get really upset, they get really defensive, they make it seem like you're wrong for having a problem with how they treat you. If they always are turning it back around on you and not taking any responsibility for their actions, and then you definitely could be in an emotionally abusive relationship. If you try to set boundaries with people, so let's say you notice that you guys always start to argue around a particular topic, or, if let's say you're in a relationship and one person really likes to go out and the other person doesn't like to go out. So you notice that they start to pick a fight with you as soon as you're getting ready to go out with your friends or whatever. Set some boundaries and say, I can tell that this is like kind of bringing a wedge between us. So let's try to do this, because I notice we always argue in these scenarios. So instead of falling into that trap, maybe let's agree to talk about it beforehand. Everyone say how they feel. So then that way we can move forward with whatever it is that we have to do without getting in an argument. And see how open they are to your boundaries. Because anything that you suggest that could help the relationship, if they're not open to it, that's definitely a sign that they could be emotionally abusing you. If they don't want a solution, they just want to stay in the conflict.
Right. Or if their solution is just all about the ways that you need to change, you need to stop doing this, you need to stop doing that. I feel like a lot of emotional abusers are narcissists. If you're dealing with a narcissist, that's going to be a whole nother video. Because a narcissist, you can't win with a narcissist. Like when a narcissist is your abuser, then you're just always wrong. It doesn't matter what you say, what you bring up to them, what kind of proof you have, you are always the one wrong. And in those types of situations, if you're dealing with someone who's like that, where they're like, you could literally in your head come up with a plan like, okay, I'm going to do my part, I'm going to be better, I'm going to communicate better, I'm going to, try to be more intentional about doing this or that or whatever, or my approach, because approach is really important too in just any type of relationship. Like how you bring up the thing that's bothering you is very important in order for them to be able to receive it. But if the person that you're with just does not ever receive what you have to say, like it's just important to understand that this is a relationship that you need to remove yourself from. It's not going to get better. It's not, and honestly, in a relationship, in a romantic relationship, or even a friendship, or any relationship that you don't have to be around, like a parent, siblings, family relationships are a little bit more challenging because you're kind of stuck in a sense, in some ways. But when it's a relationship that you have control over, like a friendship or a romantic relationship, then it's important to understand and respect yourself enough to remove yourself from the situation, because it's just not a healthy situation. It causes so much damage, and a lot of the emotional damage that's happening is damage that, one, you don't even realize is happening, but also is really hard to overcome, because you almost have to retrain your thinking after you're done after you're out of the relationship, because you have been, however long you're in this relationship, you've been conditioned to think a certain way about yourself. Like you're like mine was drama, Shauna, you're just drama, and like really I'm just trying to communicate and express. But to him, oh, you could try to confront me about something that I did that bothered you, or I disrespected you, so that makes you drama. So I'm still working on sometimes not believing those lies.
And that piggybacks perfectly into what I was going to say. The best way to avoid emotional abuse is to work on yourself. Is to work on your perspective of yourself, loving yourself. A prayer that I say all the time that I really love is for God, help me see myself the way you see me. So to think of yourself as valued, as important, as smart, as beautiful, as enough, good enough of a person for someone to treat you well. Because the higher self-esteem you have, the more that your BS meter is going to be like, be like, wait a minute.
Right.
You own some stuff right now.
Right.
And you pick up on it because you know that you're worth more. You know that you're worth something better than what someone is offering you. Also, you have to be clear. This is why self-work is so important. Because you have to be clear on the difference between love and codependence. A lot of times people who are in an abusive relationship, a lot of times fall back on, but I love them so much. But he said he really loves me and he can't live without me. Do y'all love each other, or do y'all have an unhealthy codependent relationship? Do you feel like if you weren't with him, something in your life would change that doesn't have nothing to do with love? Maybe you don't want to be lonely. Maybe you don't want something to change financially. Maybe whatever it is that you feel like he provides, do you love him, or do you just love that? And the same for him. Does he just feel like he wants someone around to cook or clean, or does he want someone that he can have sex with whenever he feels like it, or someone that's going to be there to do the stuff that maybe some other woman wouldn't want to do?
Right.
Or what have you. And I find for family relationships, when you have unhealthy family relationships, codependence is hiding in there too with our family members. So that makes it hard. So you have to do the work. In order to have healthy relationships, you have to do the work, and the hardest work is on yourself. Because you can't change other people. You can't change what they do. I mean, you can change your response, and you can change, but at the end of the day, they could still be committed to acting a dang fool, and you have to be the one with enough common sense to be like, I need to remove myself from this situation. Because every unhealthy situation that we allow ourselves to be in sets us further and further back from the life that we know we really want to have. Absolutely. And at the end of the day, you're the one making that decision. Now, I'm not saying that it's not hard to get out, because I've definitely been in situations where I'm like, man, it's taken me years to decide that I want something better for my life. But I was the only one who could make that decision. And I was the only one who was making that decision take so long. Yeah. So when you get to the other side, it makes sense, but you got to get there first. We don't always see the way until we take the step.
It's so interesting to me because I look back and I grew up just very insecure. So I was such a magnet for emotional abusers. I feel like I've been in a lot of emotionally abusive relationships because I was so insecure. But it's like now I'm such a different person. Mm-hmm. I'm like, how in the world? Because when you're in it and you're feeling that insecurity, you literally feel like there is no way out. Mm-hmm. You literally feel like I just can't imagine life without him, and I just can't, and I'm not making fun of people who feel that way, because I was that person, but it's crazy to me because I've done so much work on myself since then that I used to be that. I was the girl who was on the floor crying, begging the guy to not leave me, who was so abusive. Yeah. And it's crazy. But I really strongly want to encourage anybody who's in any type of relationship like this to get out of it. Just love yourself enough and to know that there truly are better guys out there, better women out there, because men are not the only ones who emotionally abuse. Women do it too. If it's a family member, just, set appropriate boundaries. Yeah.
And sometimes when we don't hold the people in our lives accountable to treat us right, or when we let people continue doing something, you hold them bondage to what they need to work on. You leaving them might be, I'm not saying that it is, but it might be the wake-up call that they need to be like, oh, I can't keep just acting this way. Right. Because sometimes we can enable people. That's Absolutely. The word I was looking for. We can enable them to stay in that pattern of bad behavior because we keep putting up with it. Some people, you can leave them and they'll never change. So we're not responsible for changing people. But you want to make sure that the work that they need to do, it gets to the point to they realize that they need to do that, and not that we're just staying around making it okay and pacifying, their bad behavior. So set yourself free, set them free. Nothing is more important than your peace.
Amen to
so
that.
Be by yourself and happy, versus in a relationship that is going to set you back from being the person that God has called you to be.
All right, well, that wraps it up for another Real Talk Thursday. I hope you guys benefited from it. If you did like this video, give it a thumbs up, but also share this video with anybody you feel like could benefit from it. If you know someone who is in an emotionally abusive relationship, then, share this video with them. Hopefully it might, spark a little bit of confidence in them to walk away. Because we just want to help people be free.
Right.
We just want to help people be free. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next Real Talk Thursday.
Bye.